Alright, this is Carl with Compact Equipment Store, and I'm fixing to shoot an Informal walk-around video of the Nifty Lift SD64. It's 4x4x4. It's four-wheel drive, four-wheel steer, and four-wheel suspension. I say Informal, I don't actually have a spec sheet here in my hand that I'm referring to, but the machine overall length is under 21 feet. It is 81 inches wide, 7.5 feet tall, I believe. Top ground speed is 4.8 miles per hour. The outrigger span set up is around 13.5 feet square. It's not exactly right, but that's pretty close. 21-gallon fuel tank. It has points on the front and rear for lifting and tie down. Like I said, it's four-wheel drive and four-wheel steer and four-wheel suspension. Independent suspension on all four corners. It has a 24-degree gradability, 10-degree cross slope. It's rated to set up on an 11 or 12-degree slope without using any cribbing under the outriggers. Obviously, you need to use pads and other ground support, depending on your conditions in the ground that you're working on. It's powered by 33 horsepower Kubota engine, 64-foot platform height, 70-foot working height, 42 feet working outreach. It has a three-section or three-stage telescoping upper boom. The bottom boom is quite similar to an elevator in the larger bucket trucks. It basically moves the top boom straight up from this point. That back section right there doesn't really move forward or aft. You get all of your extension from the top boom, which is nice because you get full reach from essentially ground level, plus that jib being stuck straight out, all the way up to about 33 feet, and then you start swinging the top boom up. It has 355-degree non-continuous rotation. That's what this boom stop is for, is to keep you from rotating too far and tearing up the hoses. The basket has 100 degrees of rotation via a hydraulic cylinder, which is mounted on the opposite side. All of the SD64s and SD50s that I sell will come with 24-inch outrigger pads made by Deka, and they're also sold by Alternamats. It has a 500-pound unrestricted capacity in the basket. Can work in up to 28-mile-an-hour winds. It's rated for a 90-pound side load, like if a worker's pushing or pulling on something. When I said it was unrestricted capacity, that means basically anywhere that it can reach, as long as it's set up properly, anywhere it can reach, it has a 500-pound capacity. There's no chart to refer to like on a crane where you can pick up more close to you and less further away. Here's the tie down and lifting points for the front end. Here's the bubble level the machine comes with. The machine has to be set up within 3 degrees of level with the tires off the ground for safe operation. And as you can see, that outside ring, if it'll focus for me, that outside ring is 3 degrees and the inside ring is 0 degrees. So as long as the bubble's inside the outside ring, you're good to go. There's the bottom boom rest and the top boom rest. The boom is a pentagon shape. It's flat on the top, but then on the bottom it does have a break in it. Like I said, it's a 3-section extending boom with power extension and retract. That's why there's 2 sets of chains. These chains you see here are for extending the boom and extending the sections out, and then these are for retracting the boom. The boom will go below horizontal, which is nice. You don't have to lower the bottom boom all the way to reach the ground. But that's why it needs 2 sets of chains. It's because it can actually, you can have to pull the basket back in against gravity if you're below horizontal. The tires are 15 and a half inches wide. A little more aggressive than a true turf tire, but not by much. And as you can see, its tread gaps are about a finger wide. They do really great on turf. That's kind of their main purpose. I already said the fuel tank holds 21 gallons. All the outrigger pads are held on by these poly rings, which allows them, for one, they don't come off. Like I used to have a different brand lift that occasionally the outrigger pads would pop off and then you'd have to go dig through the brush and find them. So on these they are positively retained, but they still offer a large range of motion. All of the cylinders have these load holding valves, which are actually on all the ones I've checked, and I believe on all of them in general. They're actually mounted on the extension port. And what these allow is if the machine is set up, you could actually take these hoses off right here and the cylinder would not collapse. The purpose of that is because obviously you won't, if you have a hose bust or the machine engine dies, any of those things, that's actually not what's holding up the lift. It's the load holding valves, which are on each of the cylinders. Like here's the top boom extension cylinder. There's the load holding valve. They're obviously on all the outriggers. Here's the load holding valve on the extension cylinder. The extension cylinder is trunnion mounted. So you have, this is actually the rod end, and then there's the trunnion on the body. On the bottom boom cylinder, which is actually mounted in the elbow of it, there is the load holding valve for it. All of the boom function controls are proportional, just typical hydraulic valves mounted in the basket. The controls are quite straightforward. I've got another video that I have put up that explains them. But these functions down here are the boom function. They're all proportional. This lever right here is for the drive function. It's also proportional. On top of it and down here are the electric over hydraulic switches for running the steering. You have the muffling switch, engine speed, preheat, and engine start, enable switch, drive speed, kind of like a drive speed selector switch, the on off for the whole machine, and then the emergency stop. Up there is the horn, and those 4 switches above the emergency stop are for the outriggers. And then you have your dead man switch, like all traditional boom lifts, is mounted in the floor. The hose track is quite more robust than the former lift I had. It's actually fully boxed steel that's not paper thin. This loop has wear pads on 3 sides. The top obviously doesn't get much action, but there is a little bit of play in it so it doesn't jam up. Can't really show you that right now because it's mounted right here to the center boom, to the tip, and this ring is mounted to the middle boom, and then that's the base boom, or that's the first section, second section, third section. When it's fully extended, the adapter down there comes to the ring up here, and the ring is actually out there because the center section extends. Underneath the hood, on this side, we have the controls for the machine. It's a fiberglass hood. It does have a rod to prevent it from closing on you or opening too far. If the hood's in the way, you can just pull it straight off that shaft. But we have our our hydraulic oil tank with a temperature gauge and fluid level. It's marked for minimum and maximum. Right now my fluid's about 100 degrees from running it around. so it's right at the max fill line. There's our fuel tank. We have the engine hour meter, 3 circuit breakers, the luffling switch, which is for raising the boom for transportation, the leveling switch, which is obviously for re-leveling the bucket, emergency stop, preheat the engine, crank the engine, basket overload indicator, the key switch, that selects, right now it's in the off position, turning it up, turns it to the basket, and turning it down turns it to ground control. The ground level enable switch, all of the boom functions except boom rotation, battery disconnect, and then we have the solenoid valves, which are in this area, as well as the pump for the boom functions, which is right here, and another manual pump for jacking the outriggers up. If, for example, the engine dies, you're running out of fuel, you have some kind of issue, you can lower the boom using this pump, and you can actually retract the outriggers and get it transport ready with that pump. The handles are mounted right there. Inside here are 2 logic boards. There might be a processor on them, although I didn't see them, or even an integrated circuit. It's basically just a large logic board that just reads all the simple sensors. Like in the outrigger here, the tip of the outrigger actually pivots on this pin, and there's a spring that holds it pushing down. So when you push against the ground, it actually collapses the spring and touches a micro switch, and that's how the logic board knows what's going on and if one of the outriggers is getting light. This is the 10-degree tilt alarm for transportation. It's mainly a carryover from the self-propelled models that don't have the outriggers. Obviously they don't really need to be working on a 20-degree slope without outriggers. And I'm assuming on them they have a 10-degree maximum out of level capacity. But that's also the sensor that lets you know if you're going over 10 degrees when you're working on side hills or climbing a steep grade. That bottom pocket down there is actually for lifting the machine with a forklift. You put the one fork on that side, the other fork comes over here, and that keeps it from being able to tip off or slide around on the machine, on the pallet forks. Your battery's behind that panel there, which is held on with 4 screws. On this side we have the engine, another fiberglass head. As I said before, it's a 33 horsepower Kubota diesel. Everything's nice and easy to get to. We have the drive pump, which is controlled by the rotary knob, as I mentioned. That rotary knob actually moves the spool inside here to change the displacement of the, actually the spool's in here. Anyways, it changes the displacement of the pump to give you both your drive speed and drive direction. And then here's your 2 large hoses for the drive function to actually run the motors, as well as a case drain. Then you have a 3-section gear pump for enabling multifunction. You have a filter mounted here. There's 2 filters mounted here, and then there's another filter actually mounted on the this side on the bottom. Sorry, I hit the button. But those are your main hydraulic filters. They are mounted with gauges to let you know the filter's condition in case it needs to be changed before the regular service interval. Which on this one you can see there's the gauge to let you know if it's going over pressure or the suction's too high, indicating a plugged or restricted filter for whatever reason. It also could just be that the fluid's too cold if you're in the north, where it actually gets cold enough to matter. There's your coolant reservoir. Here's the simple solenoid that it uses to control the engine speed. It's either running, it's only basically a 2-speed engine. Its idle speed is also, it's slightly elevated compared to a typical engine, but that's what you operate the boom at, or you can kick it into high speed and get a little extra speed. Fuel filter's mounted here. Obviously you see the air filter mounted, but it's not a very complicated machine. if you just look at all the parts individually. Like I said, there's the air filter. It is actually mounted on a swing out carriage if you need to service it. The pin for that is right there. You take out the bolt on this side, and if you see that little slider right there, take out this bolt and the whole engine will slide out, which I may show in another video. But the machine definitely has a lot going on, but by the same token, it is a 8,700 pound machine that's made to carry 2 people 70 feet in the air, and all of the individual components, or all the components I've seen thus far, are not complicated, not state-of-the-art, nothing really computer controlled. It's just simple on-off switches. For example, one way it knows that the boom is in the retracted position, there's actually 2 micro switches mounted here. There's one right up here, and then there's one right here, right up here. Anyways, they have this little wheel that contacts, and if you hear that snap right there, is the sound of the contact inside, either connecting or not connecting. So that lets the logic board know what's going on and where the boom is actually positioned. Also, if you noticed up here on the front boom mount, there's just another simple micro switch that the boom actually comes down on, which is right here. You can see the little wire that comes out of it. If this is actually not pushing this down, then you can't pull up the outriggers. The logic board is just simply, the best way I can think of to describe it at the moment is basically a whole bunch of relays, which are basically electric light switches, for example. And if all the light switches aren't set to on, then it disables the function. If they're all on, it enables the function. There's no actual computer programming or processing actually happening. It's just if all the switches are good, then it allows motion. If the boom is all the way retracted and sitting on there, then it will enable outrigger functions. If you're set up and you're not touching that, and the boom, otherwise the boom is deployed, be it it's off of that mount, the jib has a sensor on it. Anyways, if the logic board indicates that you're off the ground, or not, the boom is not in this resting position, and the micro switch in here gets light, that lets the logic board know to sound the alarm to tell you that that you're off the ground and one of the outriggers is getting light, so you need to come back down and check your setup. But there's nothing actually complicated about the parts. They're all basically just light switches. Like the micro switch is just a light switch. When it's pushed down, it's on, and otherwise it's off. Inside this box, there's a large printed circuit board right on here with wires connecting around the edges. Then on there's a whole bunch of clear relays. You can see things functioning. There are indicator lights to let you know if everything's, if it's sending power. Like let's say one of the relays contacts wears out over the years, you should be able to fairly easily figure out where the problem is coming from. It's not like you have to plug in your laptop and use the proprietary connector and software to interface with the machine and try to figure out, hey, why isn't my machine cranking, or anything that happens to go wrong. It's all fairly simple and straightforward connectors. Well, connectors and components. Anyways, I've rambled long enough. Feel free to like, subscribe, share. You can find us on Facebook. If you have a video of something you would like to see, let me know. Like I always say, feel free to call or text or email me anytime, and I'll get back with you just as soon as possible. But this is a 2014 Nifty Lift SD64, my personal machine with 26.5 hours on it currently.